For the next session today, I would like to introduce and welcome Sarika Nayak, Group Chief Corporate Responsibility Officer at the Capgemini Group, and a member of the Group Executive Committee, where she leads the organization's efforts globally on shaping and implementing effective strategies for diversity and inclusion, as well as social and environmental sustainability. Sarika comes with over 20 years of experience in the tech industry, where she has been driven and guided by a keen pursuit for innovation and positive impact. She firmly believes that attaining business objectives and fostering societal well-being go hand in hand. Today at Spectra, she will delve deeper into creating a responsible brand voice, aligning your values with messaging. Joining her on stage for a fireside chat will be Nandita Lakshmanan, founder and CEO at The Practice. Sarika and Nandita.
Well, thank you for being here, Sarika. I know it's busy times for you, and at the same time, it's also very interesting times. And after that session where Swamiji said that we are so used to actually putting labels so very easily, words like purpose, etc., just kind of drop out of our lips at the drop of a hat. As a group of communicators, we all know that. But I think we're in interesting times. Just a few years ago, we were talking about a lot of terms that spawned businesses, ideas, investors, reporting mechanisms. And today, those very terms seem to be under a big shadow. But what doesn't change is responsibility and purpose, which we all agree is inherent to the business. And these won't and should not go out of style. Today, our topic is about creating a responsible brand voice, aligning values to messages. And Sarika, you hold the title Chief Responsibility Officer, which is really interesting. And I do feel it's also timely to have that kind of a title. So can you share what that means in the corporate setup today?
Sure, thank you, and pleasure to be here. Thank you, Spectra, for having me, and thanks, Nandita. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You're right. Today's world is changing so rapidly. Every day we are hearing news from different parts of the world that makes us wake up with what's more in store. But some of the things that are not going to change or will remain, relevant no matter what is how organizations live to their brand value. And we have had enough examples in the past where, organizations that have believed in certain, their key brand promise, and both in action, in words and spirit, lived up to it, are the ones that you see today, thriving. And those who have a very short-term view will actually, cease to exist. One of the things that, when I took over this role about a year ago as the Group Chief Responsibility Officer, actually it was a privilege, if you ask me. It's a privilege to be leading an organization like Capgemini, where I work, where you have the ability to influence and nurture and shape the destiny of what we do, not just for our own employees, but also what we do for the society. Very important one line that comes to me every time, Nandita, and that is that, we don't inherit this planet from our ancestors. We actually borrow it from our children. I repeat that. We don't inherit this planet from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. The reason this is very important is that it changes the way we look at our role in the corporate. It changes the way we should look at our own roles as people who work in the corporate and also as individuals. I think this young girl here spoke about, how a life of purpose is the purpose of life. And really, when we talk about being a responsible organization, what do we mean? It doesn't mean just calling out jargons of, saying, hey, we have done this much on sustainability, we are saving so much of carbon. It doesn't mean just saying, hey, we have donated some amount to, people who are lesser privileged. In a country like ours, no matter how much you do, it's less. And there is more we could do, which is why, the sparkle thing that, you spoke to me, Amit spoke to me, it's so heartening. We can make a difference in every day in small ways as well. And the last thing that comes under responsibility, corporate responsibility, is being an inclusive organization. The organization that I work for exists and operates out of 50 countries, so you can imagine the cultural nuances. And today we've gone beyond the realms of just using gender as a reason for saying it's being inclusive. It's really about intergenerational ability to work together. I was at lunch with two very enterprising girls. I can't see them right now. But the kind of questions they had, the kind of worldview they had is so interesting. And their ability to work with seniors like me is actually being inclusive and making sure that they bring the best to work. So I would say being a responsible organization means that you include being thoughtful, being sensitive about everything that you do, not just as a headline, as a marketing message, and not just what goes in our reports at the end of the year.
So it's absolutely more than just a title or a designation. And I'm just wondering aloud whether our CEO roles must change to chief accountability officers or chief, and I've always been a believer, Sarika, that in public relations, given that we've always put stakeholders at the heart of every idea and conversation, I think we are perhaps most sensitive and at this point in time, at the right place at the right time to actually take on larger roles of CEOs, and hope to see you as a CEO or a chief accountability officer one day.
Thank you, Nandita. And I must say, that is one thing that I miss, seeing that we usually see a lot of CFOs and business leaders rise to the CEO position. But, if communication and what we speak is, and it has to be authentic, of course, is core to living our brand promise, then we should see more of communication leaders rising to the highest position in any organization. So why not put this challenge out to the team out here?
Take home that dream. But I want to refer to a report that I looked up. It's the Maslansky and Partners report done together with Page Society. It's called The Language of Responsible Business. It is essentially a blueprint for confident communication on environmental, social, and governance issues in the age of polarization. Do look it up. It's really interesting. And it says, the term is dead. And by the term, I mean ESG. The term is dead, but the idea is not. And I know there's a lot of panic in the room, outside. This blueprint actually calls for then reframing our messages around responsibility as corporates. Also, it continues to talk about the importance of, that the responsibility of corporates go beyond shareholders. We all know that, and we've all been saying that for a long, long time. And that is really fundamental to public relations. And it's also the beginning of responsible business. How have you seen the values of companies, the intent and action, of corporates, Sarika, in your tenure, as a professional? How have you seen intent and action being closely aligned with values of the companies?
Yeah, and Nandita, thank you for that report. I have gone through it, and I must say it's a wonderful read. The key thing is that ESG is not a bad word.
Yeah,
but it started not as a social, it was never meant to be a social movement. It was meant to be a tool, a financial kind of a tool for organizations to identify their long-term risks. And that was the objective. And over a period of time, it was helping, industries across, whichever industry, whatever size of business, to put a metrics to that risk. And, whatever gets measured improves, right? So that's what we know. And hence, people started using ESG and understanding it as an organization's responsibility. If you're meeting your ESG goals, then you are tantamount to being a responsible business. Yes and no. It actually means that you have to do much more. ESG is just a platform. So yes, I would agree that, as a concept or as a word, as a term, it is, losing interest. I'm seeing a lot of, websites removing it. It's no longer featuring in many investor reports. But the idea itself, that you define what an organization can do to show and demonstrate that it is responsible beyond just for its investors. I think that's the broader vision of responsibility. Since you mentioned reports, Nandita, I would like to call out a few more numbers. At Capgemini, we have a very interesting research team we have consistent reports that we create around what's topical. It's called Capgemini Research Institute. And one of the recent reports that I read, it was about how will consumers buy? What is important to consumers while they make their purchasing decisions in 2025? And guess what? 64 to 67% said that their decision to buy or not buy depends, one of the main criteria is how sustainable that organization is. And this is not a study only in the US, by the way. This is a study across 12 countries, more than 12,000 consumers, some of you, represented here in this room. So clearly, the organizations have to go beyond just saying that we are sustainable. They need to demonstrate that. If we look at it from the employer side, one of the biggest challenges we all face, and I see, we were talking to a few of you at lunch break, is getting the right talent, making sure that you have the brightest and the smartest talent. And trust me, it's not just in the IT side, it's not just on technology. But the talent of today, they are wanting to associate and engage with those organizations who are responsible. And I use the term responsible interchangeably with sustainability, but sustainability is only one part of being responsible. There's a Deloitte report as well, which says, I think 55% of the young, graduates, they would want to join organizations only who demonstrate authentically and with credibility that they are committed to going beyond their ESG goals. So clearly, if you look at it from the employer side, you look at it from the investor side, or you look at it from business side, clear signals that people want organizations to go beyond just a lip service that, hey, I'm a responsible organization.
And I think that comes to the point of authenticity, right? Again, another word that I think we're using ever so often these days. But I think authenticity cannot be forced. That's fundamental to that word. It has to, either you are or you are not. And just because you want to fit doesn't mean you start checking boxes. And I think that's what this whole movement kind of became, right? You were kind of trying to check boxes, and that's where companies started going wrong, and that's where I think there was disillusionment and also skepticism, right? Now, has your views changed when you look at the term authenticity from the lens of responsibility and not marketing?
Yeah, so Nandita knows that I was
CMO of before.
Yeah, so yes and no. So I was a CMO prior to this role, so puts me in a precarious situation. Yes, the perspective has changed, and it should. Earlier as a CMO, my focus was on how do I get the corporate messages, out for my audience. So my focus would probably be on making sure that to show that we are an inclusive organization, our pictures, our imagery on the website is representing that. Today, clearly it's not just the imagery, it's the authenticity and the proof points of how we are an inclusive organization. That becomes more important than just the imagery which we put out on the, on our social channels. having said that, I did want to call out that, one of the things which I think organizations really need to do better is to be more transparent about how they are reporting metrics. And I know every other day we have news of some organization going back on their net zero goals, and in recent times, people pulling away from practices around DEI. Trust me, there may be things that may come and go, but the responsibility of an organization to make sure that they do what is right does not change. There may be minor nuances in the way we approach it. For example, we've heard a lot of organizations say, hey, we have saved so many tons and tons of carbon through, some initiative. Are these science-based targets? We were one of the first organizations globally to get our net zero targets validated by SBTi. That's the gold standard in, sustainability. When you say that, you have supported X number of beneficiaries, and in my world, I don't want to be pessimistic, but, in my world, I often come across people who say, we have touched, 5 million, 10 million beneficiaries. And I'm like, if all the corporates, we add up their numbers, then hunger, poverty should have been eradicated from India years ago. So why is it that we're still seeing that? So when you say beneficiary, are you counting somebody whom you've provided a meal also as a beneficiary, as somebody whose life you've changed by giving them employment after a rigorous 6 months training? Now, I understand in the whole measurement system itself is going through change, and it'll evolve. But as organizations, I think it's very important that we base our metrics on, established frameworks, and also are very open about things that don't go wrong. I have never come across an organization till date who has, said, we failed to do these things around being responsible. I've never come across an organization that says that.
And I think one of, on the other side where we sit, Sarika, one of our experiences, and, always hope that this would change, is that when you look at things from a marketing lens, there's short-term campaigns. You want to have these, big campaign-led approach where you're spending a lot of money. And of course, like you said, you're touching lives. But for deeper impact, you do need, if you really, really want to transform, commit to budgets and investments that go on for a minimum of 3 years and perhaps go on for 5 to 10 years. And I don't see too many corporates actually doing that. And in fact, the saddest part is abandoning great initiatives because you moved on to the next big thing, and I think that is, something worth considering. And I guess that's kind of a difference between when you look at things, from the responsibility lens and you're doing things long term. But on your point of disclosure, Deloitte had come up with this ESG preparedness report where they said disclosures necessarily do not mean transparency. And, since a lot of adverse events are not really disclosed, and therefore, I think responsibility also involves not being opaque and also requires courage as a value to stand up and say, wasn't able to do it, So we spoke about authenticity, and I think I'm going to move now to the storytelling aspect.
Okay.
Go on.
My bad. I did want to touch upon storytelling, and you stole my thunder really there, When you asked me about, as a marketer, has my perspective changed, when I now lead the responsibility office, one of the things that has not changed is really the use of storytelling as a powerful medium to communicate, where we stand, our brand promise, what we have done under that. And, we've all grown up on stories. We remember those stories and they become integral part to us. We may forget the numbers. I'm sure some of you, when you walk out from the room, you'll forget the numbers that I quoted about the, Capgemini study or whichever, But you will remember the stories that we will talk through here, right? I think, we could do much better as corporates when we talk about how responsible we are, instead of doing just about metrics and measurement. We have saved so many tons of carbon dioxide, we have helped so many people. Instead of that, the stories behind them of how it has happened, I think would resonate more. And Nandita, in the years that we have talked so many times, I know you are a wonderful storyteller yourself. You told me 1 million stories yourself. So why don't you tell me from your perspective, how do you you see storytelling as a very strong and a powerful medium to make sure that we communicate well?
So, Sarika, I have a slightly different view on storytelling, and I feel actually this perhaps comes from decades of experience. So I think, I just feel that I come from a time where we were really taught that, public relations is about facts and not whitewashing of facts. And that's really kind of ingrained in me. And therefore, when we talk about storytelling, I also feel that there's a big difference between creative storytelling and using fact-based narratives for storytelling. And when you're representing a client, when you're talking responsibly, it is very important to have fact-based narratives, boring as it may be. And sometimes you have to repeat yourself to have that message entrenched. But having said that, I also believe, just like a good writer, you need to have clarity on your intent. You need to follow that up with action. And then you start storytelling. And very often, storytelling is also aspirational and not backed by action, and that falls hollow after a point. And also, it becomes very difficult to sustain creative storytelling for businesses and organizations when it is not backed by action. So that's one thing. And the second point I feel about storytelling, we've made our role a desk job. We are sitting at our computers, so we are constantly responding to emails, researching, and and public relations and communication is not a desk job. You have to be out in the field. You have to interact with your stakeholders. You have to know the pulse of your consumer, and I think that is a big shift I've seen, and maybe perhaps you have too, Sarika. Which I feel is kind of boxing storytelling in a manner which I think can improve and can get better. But you're absolutely right. In fact, yesterday we were doing a discovery exercise with a client, and we were saying, tell us 5 stories of individuals, and then we see how it can be multiplied across the millions and create a story, that can resonate better. So that's my point. But
that was her message to all of you. Go out, meet your stakeholders. There's this management by walking around.
Absolutely. We're only kind of doing justice, just maybe the tip of the iceberg. If you're sitting at your desks 10 hours a day, and thinking you're drawing out strategies and plans and doing a wonderful job. So you're missing out on that. But I think I want to go back to the previous session where he spoke about the balance between being sensitive and sensible. I think it applies here too, right?
Absolutely, and frankly, it applies in every walk of life.
Yeah.
I think when we say being sensible, it does not mean that your mental faculties take over full control and you forget that you are a human. At the same time, when you say you're sensitive, it doesn't mean you just forget what is logical and what's the right thing to do. At the end of the day, especially people like me work in a corporate. There is a corporate mandate, so you need to make sure that you are aligning to that. But that doesn't mean that you do it without a heart. That doesn't mean you do it without empathy. So when we say we be an inclusive organization, it's not going after that number. It's about making sure that we are setting up processes and people who understand how to be an inclusive organization.
Yes, absolutely. So now I want to segue into this whole aspect of aligning values and messages, and how do you bring in that rigor of research, thought, and action, and bring in intent to the message, the intent of your values into your messaging. Also, when we talk of values, we sometimes leave behind business value while focusing on, for a better word, the moral values, right? I think we're really focusing on that. And that has kind of led to terms like greenwashing and pinkwashing and wokeism and so on and so forth. You know, you were very categoric about that when we spoke, that it is important to talk about what it does for business. And I'll just give you a little example of, you know, one of our clients, and they released a report where they called out that India needs 145 women in the workforce to meet 30 trillion USD economic target in India by 2047, right? Now that is a clarion call for action for everybody, as against saying perhaps that we believe in you know, diversity, equity, and inclusion, you know, because I think it needs to be more inspiring than that. And how do you deal with that, Sarika? How do you actually bring in the intent, action, and then align that to the messaging?
So in my view, it all starts with the purpose of the organization. And I think, you know, purpose is not just a sentence which is crafted by a set of marketing folks. It's the core for the organization. So it's very important that the purpose of the organization is actually something which is brought in grounds up with involvement of all key stakeholders. At Capgemini, our purpose is it's like our, you know, lighthouse. It's a guiding principle across all that we do. And our brand purpose is really to unleash human energy through technology for an inclusive and sustainable future. And I repeat this in every conversation that I have, because whatever we do, we are a technology organization at the end of the day, and our strength and our biggest you know, power is our talented set of employees. And our focus is that whatever solutions and, you know, work that we do with our clients should enable it to become a better, inclusive, and a sustainable organization, I mean, world in general. And hence, you know, whenever there is any let's say, a decision-making that needs to be done, you know, where there could be a fork in the road, or, you know, something that there are two ways to look at it, we just bring this guiding principle back, which is our brand promise. And that helps you navigate back into action. I'll give you a few examples, you know, like, you know, in India, so, you know, like I said, you know, sustainability is something that we are truly, truly, truly committed to as an organization. We are among the, you know, early entrants into the RE100. This is a group of about 400 organizations globally who are committed to becoming, you know, using renewable energies by 2025. I think it's 2030, not 2025. And in fact, as I speak, we are on 100% renewable energy in the organization, 5 years ahead of, you know, our plan. The reason I call this out is not to applaud us, but it's the decisions that were taken behind. So, for example, we did have to make investments into, you know, newer technologies, which cost money. We actually today, to encourage our employees to use EVs, India doesn't have a very encouraging, let's say, you know, price points for electric vehicles. So we said, okay, we cannot, you know, subsidize those vehicles, but then we offer free charging points to all our employees who are bringing EV vehicles. Now, like this, I can give you 100 examples. So the decisions were not decided only on the financial part. It was decided basis the key guiding principle, which is embedded in our brand promise. And hence, you know, I feel that, you know, often CEOs relegate this vision to somebody else. I think it's something that they should put their heart and soul. In fact, you know, I mean, and some of the organizations, you know, one of the other examples that comes to my mind as a very good example of how the brand association with the key message is the Tata Group. I think they do an excellent job in terms of, you know, reinforcing the trust, because they stand for trust. And, you know, their campaigns like Jago Re, or, you know, the recent one, which is helping truck drivers, or, you know, all of that is aimed to building trust. So I think that core value for what the brand stands is very important to emphasize every time.
I think we'll now move to understanding something bit at a tactical level, but I think, you know, with so many of us in the room who are from the other side, and I think we are more people from the PR consulting side than the corporate side. So give us a peek into how you visualize your programs, especially, Sarika, considering you have a global role and you are managing several cultural, regulatory, societal nuances when you're building your program. And do take us through that entire process of how you do that, and how do you create large programs, how do you kind of make your decisions about what works, what will not work. Would love to hear that.
These are not only communication programs, right? This is just...
They're all overall.
Okay.
Your overall mandate.
Because, we've gone horribly wrong in some and we've done well in a few,
No, but
so...
that's, And I mean in your role,
Yeah. So, when we look at programs globally, before that, I do want to say that, I spent nearly 20 years in India, and a lot of my experience really is started from a ground level in India, and I must say the kind of work we do here is phenomenal. It's outstanding, especially what we do in areas like, helping the society, the kind of leverage of technology we are doing, not just, organizations like myself, but the thousands out there who are using technology to bridge the digital divide between the haves and the have-nots. It's just that, when we look at the worldview, we should be a little sensitive to the cultural nuances that happen across. Now, I can give you a few examples, where, let's say, the whole movement around Pride March, the LGBT plus community that thrives on making sure that they are very visible during the Pride March, and I know it's picked up momentum globally, is something that we believe in as well, because as an inclusive organization, we want everybody to bring their full selves to the organization. And last year when we were planning this, program, and we do this just not during the Pride March, it's actually celebrated all through the year as inclusion. But when we were planning this, we realized that there are 7 countries in which we operate where actually it is criminalized to even talk or discuss about, LGBT plus. And that's when we work in a hub and spoke manner where the group, which is my team, we make sure that what is key to the group priority is laid up there. And the local teams, we work with them to make sure that, we are taking the local nuances. So for example, in this particular case, we made sure that, we hold our focus on inclusion globally. But, we don't change the colors. I know nowadays people just go on, LinkedIn and they change the colors to rainbow colors or multicolors. We said, no, we will not change anything, but we will hold our position as inclusion because that's our brand purpose, right? So that's one way where taking local inputs is important. On a more recent example, one of the things that we are trying to, and I didn't touch upon that really earlier, was there is a lot of power in doing things together. And in our employee strength, which is more than 170,000 in India and globally 350,000, employee network groups are very, very strong, and they are good ways to connect. So we are trying to build a sustainability employee network group. Now, there are different ways to build it. What we've done is we've said, hey, sustainability, we are doing it at a group level. How do we get employees to participate? So that's core to our brand purpose. Now we are talking to each of the countries, large countries, to say, hey, what would it mean? What does it mean for you? Because what sustainability means to India really would be around water, it would be around solar, it would be biodiversity, water, solar. In US and all, they're talking more about biodiversity. So each country has a nuanced way in which they would like to operate. So taking those local nuances, giving them the flexibility to operate in that, but making sure that the overall promise holds.
And there's going to be so much of learning because you're in the midst of so many ideas. And is the employee network also a source of idea generation for you?
Absolutely. So, this whole idea about the sustainability employee network group came from the networks. So we have 4 networks currently, and one of them came back saying, hey, since sustainability is so critical and central to the organization, can we explore this? So yes, we get some of the best ideas from there. We also are expected to kind of hold some of the very difficult conversations with them. So there are teams that ask us, why are we not doing better on some of our initiatives? So they hold a mirror to us in more ways than one.
Interesting. So I think we just got about 7 minutes. So if there are any questions, because I have a question or two for Sarika, but if any one of you would like to ask a question.
Hi, I just wanted to ask that have we already missed the bus in terms of the climate change, in terms of the fact that our overall global targets, especially with Mr. Trump coming in and saying that, no, we will go back to oil and cancel all the environmental agreements that we had done, including the Paris Agreement.
So I'm an eternal optimist, and hence I would say that, we are still very much on course. And when I say we, I mean all of us, not the organization itself. But yes, we are at a very critical juncture. If we do not continue on the journey that we have all embarked on, then definitely, our future generations are never going to forgive us. Having said that, I do want to call out that, yes, there have been recent changes, political changes and, macroeconomic changes which indicate that, the focus on sustainability will go down. But I think we need to wait and watch, because really there is a large awakening. We are all feeling the impact of climate change. We feel the floods and the rains and the tsunamis, right? It's not something that's happening to somebody else in some other corner of the world. It's happening to us and our loved ones. My daughter studies in LA, and I can tell you that the whole fear of the wildfires is something that keeps me awake every day. So I would say that, we should take some of those announcements with a pinch of salt, because some of them are more for, a kind of moving away from the Paris Agreement does not change the focus of some of the other organizations who are still on the path.
Yeah, I have one question, which is on sustainability and a lot of these major issues. There are various schools of thought. The sort of the road to hell is paved with good intentions. When you have a choice between multiple options, what are the metrics by which you choose, okay, this is my version of sustainability?
So this manifests in different things. First, at a corporate level, it's easier to kind of define those criteria which you will focus on from a sustainability. So for example, what kind of packaging, from where is it coming, what is the source? You can go right up to the end till there, right? And it's about asking those questions. If it is at an individual level, right, I think, and again, I was talking to some of the, like I said, my inputs are based on what I spoke to some of the young kids during, not kids, I shouldn't say, the young adults during lunch. Their own awareness about what they will pick and how they will choose has gone up significantly. They are actually asking those difficult questions. You were talking about the employee network group. We get asked in our town halls, our CEO is asked very clearly. He says that, so when you say that we have reduced scope 3 emissions, which is basically the most difficult part of the correction process, why aren't we progressing more? Can you tell us how many new suppliers have we taken who show the whole journey of the supply chain? So my view would be, from the organization standpoint, it is possible to go, I would still say scope 3 is tough, but it is possible to kind of, chase that sustainability down. From an individual standpoint, I think it's more about creating awareness and making sure that they go to that, search point.
So what worries you more? Green hushing because of criticism that companies are not doing enough or not meeting their promised standards, or the backlash against wokeism and ESG for companies doing too much?
Actually, I would like to put it this way. More than worry, what excites me more is when I see organizations putting their plans around sustainability, around being an inclusive organization and doing what they should for the society ahead, and the key focus in all key decisions. So, and I was talking to Nandita, and I'm going to, we were laughing over it. In some of our board discussions, often the agenda for CSR is definitely not the first one, right? It used to be the last, now it's climbed up, But, and I used to often joke earlier saying that, do you want us to do this session during the lunch break, But now, if you ask me, it has moved right up there. So it's climbing slowly but steadily to discussions which are one of the top ones in the agenda. So I'm not worried about, one or the other. I'm excited by the thought that there are so many people who are keeping this as top of their mind, and not just corporates, individuals are asking those difficult questions, they're making those choices, so that we know that we have not missed the bus, really.
I think Sarika just spoke about that, and we were just speaking about let's not put labels. Let's avoid labels, and and I think there's so many terms and phrases that are coming up. Perhaps because they're making things simpler for a larger audience, as all of these are really, really complex issues. But at the same time, I think we all hang on to them like they are the final straws, and I think that's somewhere where I think there has to be a lot of space for open discussion, for debates, and as much as Sarika, I'm sure, as much as you are looking to having your stakeholders kind of align and buy in, you're also having to explain and negotiate your stance. And I think sometimes it's the negotiations that we forget. And we think that's a bad thing. But these things take time. And I just feel that, we need to keep up your optimism. After all, we want people like you to be at the helm of organizations, because that's the thought process you come with. And I think businesses will then only thrive. And everything that we're discussing today, seeming like an exception, actually becomes mainstream and the norm. So thank you very much, Sarika, for being here. Really enjoyed the conversation with you.
My pleasure.
Thank
And
you.
I just end with one thing, because it's really profound. It's that we don't inherit our planet from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. So every time you hear this, it will propel you to think deeper and beyond just our lifetimes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarika, for your time, and thank you, Nandita, for the conversation. I request Nandita to please present Sarika with a Sparkle gift card.